Commander Vex-High limped through the grand doors of the council chamber. His metal leg clicked against the crystal floor with each step. The sound echoed in the huge room like a warning bell, but no one was listening to warnings today. The 12 council members sat on their floating chairs, high above the speaking floor. Each one represented a different alien race from across the galaxy. They looked down at Vex-High with barely hidden annoyance. To them, he was just an old soldier who should have retired long ago. Vex-High's scarred face showed no emotion as he walked to the center of the room. Half of his shell-like armor was missing, replaced with metal parts that gleamed under the bright lights. His left arm was completely artificial now. The humans had done that to him 50 years ago during the First War. Council members, Vex-High began, his voice rough from old injuries. I come before you today to speak about the humans. A few council members shifted in their seats. Councillor Zenthra, a tall being with large eyes and smooth blue skin, let out a small laugh. The humans again, Commander? We have heard your stories many times. Vex-High ignored the mockery in her voice. You plan to attack Earth in 3 days. This is a mistake that will cost many lives. Mistake? Admiral Colven leaned forward in his chair. His silver skin reflected the chamber lights as he spoke. Commander, these humans barely learned to travel between stars a few hundred years ago. Our ships are faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything they possess. That is exactly why you should fear them, Vex-High said quietly. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then several council members began to chuckle. The sound grew louder until it filled the entire room with laughter. Vex-High waited for the noise to die down. Then he continued. I was there during the first contact 50 years ago. I saw what they can do. You saw them get defeated, Councillor Bruthen rumbled. The massive creature's voice was like rocks falling. Your forces won that war. We survived that war, Vex-High corrected. Barely. He began to pace slowly across the crystal floor. Each step brought back memories he had tried to forget. Let me tell you what I learned about humans. When we shot their soldiers, they did not fall down and die like normal beings. They kept fighting with holes in their bodies. I saw one human continue to attack with a broken spine and a punctured lung. Pain tolerance means nothing against superior firepower, Zenthra said with a wave of her hand. It was not just pain tolerance. Vex-High stopped pacing and looked up at the council. We had better weapons, better armor, better ships. But they learned, every day of that war, they learned something new. They took our broken weapons and made new ones from the pieces. They studied our tactics and found ways to beat them. The large screens around the chamber displayed images of Earth and human space colonies. The council members looked at the primitive buildings and simple spacecraft with obvious contempt. Look at their technology, Admiral Colven pointed at the screens. Their fastest ships are slower than our cargo vessels. Their weapons cannot pierce our basic shields. How can you fear such a backward species? Vex-High's artificial arm whirred softly as he clenched his metal fist. Because they do not think like we do. We build ships to follow our ancient designs. We fight wars using strategies that are thousands of years old. Humans make things up as they go. He walked closer to the council chairs. During the war, we trapped a group of human soldiers in a mining facility. We cut off their power, their communications, their escape routes. According to every military manual in the galaxy, they should have surrendered. What happened? Councillor Thresh asked. The insect-like being's multiple eyes glittered with mild curiosity. They turned the mining equipment into weapons. They used the facility's life support system to create poison gas and pumped it into our command post. Then they stole our transport ship while we were evacuating our own people. Vex-High shook his head. In one day, they turned a hopeless situation into a complete victory. Luck, Admiral Colven said dismissively. It happened dozens of times, Vex-High replied. Every time we thought we understood them, they did something impossible. They do not follow the rules of war, because they do not know the rules exist. He turned his back to the council and looked up at the great window that showed the stars beyond. You want to know why I fear them? Because they are unpredictable. Because they never give up. Because they learn from every mistake and never make the same one twice. Even if your stories are true, Zenthra said. That was 50 years ago. We know more about them now. We have better weapons. Larger fleets. Vexhai turned around slowly. And they have had 50 years to prepare. Prepare for what? Bruthen laughed. They do not even know we are coming. The humans have been watching us watch them. They know about our surveillance ships. They know about our trade routes through their space. They have been learning about us for 5 decades, while you have been ignoring them. The chamber grew quiet again. Some of the council members looked less certain than before. Commander, Zenthra said carefully, what exactly are you suggesting? Do not attack Earth. Open proper negotiations with them. Treat them as equals, not as subjects to be conquered. The silence lasted for nearly a minute. Then Admiral Colvin began to laugh again. Equals? These primitive creatures are equals to the races that built this galaxy? Mock me if you wish, Vexhai said. But mark my words. If you attack the humans with the same arrogance you show today, you will lose more than ships and soldiers. You will lose your certainty that the old ways of doing things still work. He began walking toward the chamber doors. I have delivered my warning. What you do with it is your choice. As he reached the exit, Zenthra called after him. And what will you do, Commander? Vexhai paused at the doorway. I will return to my outpost at the edge of human space. When your fleet comes running home in defeat, I will be there to help whoever survives. The doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment before the discussions began. The council chamber buzzed with conversation after Vexhai left. The 12 leaders of the galactic government sat in their floating chairs, discussing what they had just heard. Most of them were shaking their heads and making jokes. That old warrior has been telling the same scary stories for 50 years, Admiral Colven said to the others. He lost half his body in that first war and never got over it. Counselor Zenthra nodded in agreement. Her large eyes looked amused rather than worried. I scanned his thoughts during his speech. He truly believes what he says. But fear makes people see monsters where none exist. She waved her hand, and the large screens changed to show detailed images of human settlements. Small cities with simple buildings appeared next to pictures of human spacecraft. The ships looked bulky and slow compared to the sleek vessels used by the galactic races. Look at this evidence, Zenthra continued. Their largest city has fewer than 20 million inhabitants. Our smallest colony ships carry more people than that. Their weapons are chemical explosives and magnetic projectiles. Our children play with more advanced toys. Bruthen, the massive rock-like counselor, rumbled with laughter. Perhaps we should send toys instead of warships. The humans might find them more challenging to fight against. The other council members joined in the laughter. Only Counselor Thresh, the insect-like representative, remained quiet. Her multiple eyes blinked slowly as she studied the human images. Is something troubling you, Thresh? Admiral Colvin asked. I am simply wondering why Commander Vexhai seemed so certain. Thresh replied. He has served the Council faithfully for over a century. His warnings have saved lives before. That was against real threats, Zenthra said dismissively. Not against barely civilized primates who just learned to leave their home planet. Admiral Colvin stood up from his chair and walked to the center of the chamber. Enough discussion. We have delayed this operation for too long already. The humans control 17 star systems that rightfully belong in our trade network. Their primitive governments refuse to accept our generous offers of protection and guidance. He gestured at the screens, which now showed star maps of human territory. These systems contain valuable resources and strategic hyperspace routes. We cannot allow them to remain outside our control simply because Commander Vexhai has nightmares. What do you propose, Admiral? Asked Counselor Even, representing the crystal-based Nexari race. Operation Starfall, Colvin announced. We will assemble a demonstration fleet of 200 ships, led by our newest dreadnought, the Eternal Dominion. We will jump into their home system, demand immediate surrender, and when they see our superior force, they will submit without bloodshed. Zenthra smiled at the plan. A show of overwhelming power, simple and effective. How long will this operation take? 3 days at most, Colvin replied confidently. 1 day to travel to Earth, 1 day to accept their surrender and establish our authority. 1 day to return home with the signed treaties. And if they refuse to surrender? Thresh asked quietly. The Admiral paused for a moment, then shrugged. We will destroy a few military installations as a demonstration. Once they see what our weapons can do, they will quickly see reason. No species has ever been foolish enough to fight against such overwhelming odds. Perfect, Zenthra said, clapping her hands together. We can present the completed conquest to the next full council meeting. This will show the other species in the galaxy that the Confederation's expansion continues smoothly. The council voted unanimously to approve Operation Starfall. Within hours, orders went out across the galaxy to begin assembling the largest fleet seen in peaceful times. On the military shipyards orbiting Nexar Prime, engineers worked around the clock to prepare the Eternal Dominion. The massive ship was over 5 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire planetary defense fleets. Its shields could withstand direct hits from stellar radiation, and its faster-than-light engines could cross the galaxy in weeks. Admiral Thisisara received the command of Operation Starfall with great excitement. She was young for a Catalian admiral, only 300 years old, and saw this mission as her chance to prove herself worthy of greater responsibilities. Unlike old veterans like Vex High, she had never fought a real war. All her battles had been training exercises or brief conflicts with space pirates. The humans will surrender immediately when they see the Eternal Dominion, she told her staff officers. This will be the easiest victory in military history. Her officers agreed enthusiastically. The youngest races in the galaxy always gave up quickly when confronted with Confederation power. It was simply logical behavior. Meanwhile, far away on a small outpost near the edge of human space, Commander Vex High watched the news reports about fleet movements with growing worry. His artificial sensors could detect the massive energy signatures of warships gathering at staging points throughout Confederation space. He sat alone in his simple quarters, looking out at the stars through a reinforced window. His metal fingers tapped nervously against his desk as he tried to decide what to do. Finally, he activated his personal communication system and began sending encrypted messages to contacts throughout the military. Most were old soldiers like himself, veterans who had survived actual combat instead of just simulation battles. The Council has approved the attack on Earth, he wrote. Remember what we learned 50 years ago. Prepare for refugees. The survivors will need help when they return. Some of his contacts sent back confused replies. Others asked why he was so worried about attacking such a weak enemy. But a few understood his concerns and began making their own quiet preparations. Back in the fleet's staging areas, the final ships arrived and took their positions. 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy formed perfect geometric formations around the Eternal Dominion. Each ship carried enough weapons to conquer a dozen primitive worlds. Admiral Thisisara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the fleet's final preparations. Her officers reported that all systems were ready, all crews were prepared, and all ships had full ammunition supplies. Begin the jump to human space, she ordered. The stars around the fleet began to shift and blur as the ships entered hyperspace. In a few hours, they would arrive in the Sol system and demand Earth's immediate surrender. This will be remembered as the day humanity joined the galactic community, Thisara said to her officers. None of them noticed the small, stealthed human observation ship that had been watching their preparations from a safe distance. The ship's crew finished recording the alien fleet's size, composition, and heading before jumping away to deliver their intelligence to Earth's military command. The war was about to begin, but only one side knew it was coming. The alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a dark cloud blocking the sun. 200 warships formed perfect lines, stretching across space, each one larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. At the center of the formation, the Eternal Dominion glowed with power that could be seen from Mars. Admiral Thisisara stood on her command bridge, watching the tactical displays show Earth's pathetic defenses. A few dozen orbital platforms surrounded the blue planet, along with perhaps 50 human warships that looked like toys compared to her fleet. "Deploy long-range sensors," she ordered her crew. "I want a complete scan of every human military installation in this system." The results appeared on the main screen within minutes. Earth had 3 major space stations, a small lunar colony, military bases on Mars, and mining operations in the asteroid belt. Everything looked exactly as primitive as the intelligence reports had predicted. "Begin jamming all human communications," Thisazara commanded. "I want them isolated and confused when we deliver our demands." Waves of electromagnetic interference spread out from the alien ships, cutting off radio signals, internet connections, and satellite communications across human space, or so the aliens thought. What they didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 50 years. Ever since the First Contact War, human engineers had developed communication systems that worked through quantum entanglement and subspace frequencies that alien technology couldn't detect. On Earth, President Sarah Chen sat in the underground command center beneath Geneva, watching the alien fleet through their hidden sensor networks. Around her, military officers and government leaders from every nation worked together with calm efficiency. "They're jamming our regular communications just like Vex High's reports predicted," General Rodriguez announced from his command station. "But our quantum networks are still functioning perfectly." "Good," President Chen replied. "Send activation code Omega to all military units. This is not a drill." Across human space, the message spread instantly through hidden communication channels. Every military base, every space station, every colony received the same simple message: "The aliens have arrived. Execute Plan Prometheus." Plan Prometheus had been 50 years in the making. It was humanity's answer to the question of how to fight an enemy with superior technology and overwhelming numbers. The answer was simple: don't fight like they expect you to fight. Admiral Thisazara opened a communication channel to Earth, confident that her show of force would end this conflict before it began. "Attention, people of Earth." Her translated voice echoed across every human communication device that still worked. "I am Admiral Thisazara of the Galactic Confederation Fleet. You are surrounded by 200 warships, each capable of destroying your entire planetary defense force." On Earth, billions of people stopped what they were doing to listen to the alien voice. But instead of panic, there was something else in the air, something the aliens had never seen before and didn't understand. "Your governments have refused our generous offers of protection and membership in our galactic community," the Admiral continued. "This is your final opportunity to surrender peacefully. Lower your shields, power down your weapons, and prepare to receive our representatives." President Chen activated her own communication system, broadcasting her response on every frequency she could reach. "Admiral Thisazara, this is President Chen of the United Earth Government. We have received your message and understand your position. We request 24 hours to consider your terms and prepare our response." The human leader's calm, polite tone surprised Thisazara. She had expected either immediate surrender or desperate defiance. This measured response was something she hadn't prepared for. "Very well," Thisazara replied after consulting with her officers. "You have 24 hours to make the intelligent choice. Do not mistake our patience for weakness." As the communication ended, Thisazara turned to her tactical officer. "Keep sensors focused on their military installations. I want to know immediately if they try to mobilize their forces." What the alien sensors detected over the next few hours seemed to confirm their expectations. Human military ships powered down their weapons and retreated to defensive positions around Earth. Space stations went into minimal power mode. The asteroid mining operations shut down completely. "They're preparing to surrender," Thisazara told her bridge crew. "Look how quickly they've abandoned any thought of resistance." But what the alien sensors couldn't detect was the frenzy of hidden activity taking place throughout human space. In underground facilities, civilian engineers worked alongside military specialists to modify everything from mining equipment to cargo ships into potential weapons. On Mars, the supposedly shut-down mining operations were actually producing thousands of improvised missiles using ore processing equipment. The materials looked like normal industrial activity to alien sensors, but they were building the largest ammunition stockpile in human history. In the asteroid belt, powered down. Mining ships were quietly attaching fusion charges to large asteroids and calculating trajectory paths toward the alien fleet's position. The aliens saw inactive industrial ships. They didn't see mobile artillery platforms being prepared. Most importantly, across every human settlement, people were receiving detailed briefings about alien technology, tactics, and weaknesses that had been gathered over 50 years of careful observation. Information flowed through quantum networks, spread by personal messages, and passed along by word of mouth. Dr. Elizabeth Park, chief engineer at the Luna City shipyard, worked with her team to implement modifications they had practiced in secret for decades. They were turning civilian passenger ships into fast attack vessels by stripping out everything non-essential and installing oversized engines and weapons. "How long do we have?" her assistant asked, while welding armor plates over passenger windows. 18 hours until the deadline, Dr. Park replied. "But we'll be ready in 12. We've been practicing this for 20 years. Meanwhile, in hidden bunkers around Earth, human hackers analyzed the alien jamming signals and communication patterns. Within 6 hours, they had broken the basic encryption codes and were listening to alien fleet communications. They think we're beaten already," reported Maria Santos, head of the Electronic Warfare Division. "Their security is almost non-existent. Because they can't imagine we might fight back." President Chen received updates from every sector of human space. The news was better than she had dared to hope. "Orbital defenses will be ready 6 hours early," General Rodriguez reported. "The Mars installations have enough ammunition for a month-long siege, and the asteroid belt operations have prepared some very nasty surprises." "What about civilian morale?" Chen asked. "That's the most remarkable thing," the general replied with a slight smile. "Instead of panic, we're seeing celebration. People are excited that we're finally going to show these aliens what humanity can do." As the alien deadline approached, Admiral Thisisara noticed something that puzzled her. Human space had become very quiet, but it didn't feel like the silence of defeat. It felt more like the silence before a thunderstorm. She dismissed the thought as paranoia. What could these primitive beings possibly do against the most advanced fleet in the galaxy? The countdown to humanity's response continued, while 200 alien ships waited confidently for Earth's surrender. They had no idea that they were about to face the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy, an enemy that had spent 50 years learning how to turn disadvantages into advantages. The calm before the storm was almost over. 24 hours after the alien ultimatum, Admiral Thisisara waited for Earth's surrender message. Her fleet maintained perfect formation around the human home system, weapons powered and ready for the expected capitulation. At exactly the deadline moment, President Chen's voice reached the alien fleet. "Admiral Thisisara, we have considered your offer carefully. Our answer is no." Thisisara felt a moment of surprise, then anger. "Then you have chosen destruction over wisdom. Prepare to witness the power of the Confederation." 200. "We're prepared," Chen replied simply. What happened next would confuse military historians for generations. The human response didn't begin with massive fleet movements or dramatic declarations of war. Instead, it started with a small cargo ship emerging from behind Jupiter's largest moon. The ship looked harmless. Alien sensors identified it as a civilian ore transport, probably trying to flee the system. Thisisara's tactical officer barely glanced at it. "Single civilian vessel attempting to escape," he reported. "Shall we intercept?" "Ignore it," Thisisara ordered. "Focus on their military targets." That was her first mistake. The civilian ship was actually the converted freighter New Horizon, crewed by former asteroid miners who had spent decades learning to navigate dangerous space. As it approached the edge of the alien formation, it suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds, using an experimental drive system. Before the aliens could react, the New Horizon slammed into the side of a Confederation destroyer, its cargo bay packed with fusion explosives. The alien ship's shields, designed to stop energy weapons, couldn't handle the kinetic impact. Both ships vanished in a brilliant flash of light. "What just happened?" Thisisara demanded. Before her officers could answer, more contacts appeared on the sensors. Dozens of ships emerged from the asteroid belt, from behind planetary moons, from the dark spaces between worlds. They looked like mining vessels, cargo haulers, and passenger transports, but they moved with military precision. "Admiral, we're detecting over 300 civilian vessels converging on our position," the tactical officer reported with growing alarm. Thisazara stared at the display in disbelief. "Impossible. Our intelligence showed they had fewer than 50 military ships. These aren't military vessels, ma'am. They appear to be converted civilian craft." What followed over the next 6 hours would become known as the Battle of Unthinkable Tactics. Human forces attacked in ways that no military academy in the galaxy had ever taught students to handle. Mining ships that should have been fleeing instead charged straight at alien cruisers, using industrial cutting lasers as weapons. Passenger liners came in fast and low, launching improvised missiles made from cargo containers filled with explosive ore processing chemicals. Most disturbing to the alien fleet, the humans didn't seem interested in destroying ships. Instead, they focused on disabling alien vessels and then boarding them with teams of engineers and soldiers. Captain Maria Vasquez led one of these boarding parties aboard the captured human transport, Second Chance. Her team had trained for this moment for 20 years, studying every piece of alien technology they could find and learning to adapt it quickly. "Remember," she told her assault team as they approached a damaged alien frigate, "we don't want to destroy their computers. We want to copy everything and then use their own systems against them." The alien crew of the frigate had never faced boarders before. In traditional space warfare, damaged ships were either rescued by their own forces or destroyed by the enemy. The idea of humans risking their lives to capture alien technology was completely outside their experience. Within 2 hours, Vasquez's team had not only captured the ship but figured out how to operate its communication system. Soon, human voices were broadcasting on Confederation frequencies, spreading confusion throughout the alien fleet. "Admiral, our secure communications have been compromised," Thisazara's communication officer reported with panic in his voice. "The humans are using our own codes against us." This was exactly what Commander Vex High had warned about 50 years earlier. Humans didn't follow the standard rules of warfare. They learned, adapted, and improvised faster than any species the galaxy had ever seen. By the end of the first day, things got worse for the alien fleet. A group of human hackers had used the captured alien technology to introduce viruses into Confederation computer systems. Alien ships began experiencing random system failures, weapons that wouldn't fire, and navigation computers that gave false readings. "How is this possible?" Thisara asked her chief engineer. "Our computer security is the best in the galaxy. They're not attacking our security directly," the engineer explained with obvious confusion. "They're using our own maintenance protocols against us. Somehow, they've figured out how to make our computers think they need to shut down for routine repairs." On the second day, the humans revealed another surprise. The abandoned asteroid mining operations suddenly came alive, hurling massive rocks at the alien fleet, using magnetic acceleration systems. But these weren't random attacks. The humans had calculated precise trajectories to force the alien ships into specific positions. "They're hurting us," Thisara realized with growing horror. "They're using asteroids to push our formation where they want us." Where the humans wanted them turned out to be directly in the path of the largest solar flare in 50 years. Human scientists had been tracking the sun's activity for months and had timed their battle plan to use stellar radiation as a weapon. The alien ships, designed for deep space operations, found their shields overloading under the massive energy bombardment. Several smaller vessels lost power completely and began drifting helplessly. Thisazara watched her perfect fleet formation collapse into chaos as human forces attacked from every direction, using tactics that made no sense, according to every military manual she had ever studied. "Admiral, we've lost 47 ships," her tactical officer reported. "Our remaining forces are scattered across the system, many with damaged systems. The humans have captured 12 of our vessels and are apparently studying our technology." "How many human ships have we destroyed?" Thisara asked. 31 confirmed kills, ma'am." Thisazara felt sick. She had started this battle with overwhelming numerical and technological superiority. Now she was losing ships faster than the enemy. And worse, The humans seemed to be getting stronger with each captured alien vessel. On the third day, human forces demonstrated their most terrifying ability. A captured Confederation cruiser, now operated by a human crew, jumped into the middle of the alien formation and began broadcasting something that made Thisazara's blood freeze. "Attention, Confederation fleet," came a human voice speaking perfect Catalan. "We know you can understand this message. We have studied your shield frequencies, your weapon patterns, and your tactical protocols. We are now broadcasting all of this information to every human vessel in the system." Thisazara watched in horror as human ships began modifying their shields to match Confederation frequencies and adapting their weapons to exploit alien weaknesses that had been discovered through captured technology. "Ma'am," her tactical officer said quietly, "I'm detecting human ships using our own torpedo designs against us. Somehow they've learned to manufacture our weapons." The 3-day war that the Council had planned was now entering its second week. Thisazara's once mighty fleet was reduced to fewer than 100 functioning ships, scattered and demoralized. The humans controlled most of the solar system and were using captured alien technology to build new weapons every day. Worst of all, intercepted human communications showed that Earth was already sharing their captured alien technology with other human colonies. The knowledge that had taken Confederation races thousands of years to develop was spreading through human space in a matter of days. As Thisazara prepared to send a desperate message requesting reinforcements, she finally understood what Commander HFY had been trying to warn them about. The humans weren't just fighting a war, they were learning how to become a galactic power. 3 months after the failed invasion of Earth, the remnants of Admiral Thisazara's fleet limped back to Confederation space. Of the 200 ships that had departed with such confidence, only 78 returned. Many of those were heavily damaged and barely functional. The Eternal Dominion, pride of the Confederation fleet, was not among them. The massive dreadnought now served as the flagship of the newly formed Human Defense Force, its alien technology reverse-engineered and improved by human engineers. Admiral Thisazara stood in the same council chamber where Commander HFY had delivered his warning months earlier. But this time, the atmosphere was very different. The 12 council members sat in stunned silence as she delivered her report. "The humans were prepared for us," she said, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "Everything Commander HFY warned about was true. They fought unlike any enemy we have ever faced. Everything we have ever faced. Everything Commander HFY. Everything Commander HFY. We have everything Commander HFY. Everything Commander HFY." Counselor Zenthra, who had laughed at HFY's warnings, now looked pale and shaken. "How is this possible? Our intelligence showed them to be primitive and disorganized." "They used our own intelligence gathering against us," Thisazara replied. "For 50 years, they have been watching our surveillance ships, learning our languages, studying our technology. While we saw them as inferior beings, they were treating us as their greatest teachers." The tactical displays around the chamber showed the current state of human space. What the Council saw made them even more worried. The 17 star systems that humanity had controlled before the war had expanded to 25. Human ships, now equipped with captured alien technology, were exploring new territories and making contact with other species. "They're not just rebuilding," reported Counselor Veen, studying the intelligence data. "They're sharing their captured technology with every species that wants to trade with them. The Valdari Collective has already signed a mutual defense treaty with Earth." This was the news that truly frightened the Council. The Valdari had been members of the Confederation for 800 years, but their loyalty had always been uncertain. They had often complained about the strict trade regulations and military requirements imposed by the central government. "How many of our member species have made contact with the humans?" asked Bruthen. 17 so far," Thisazara answered. "And the number grows each week. The humans are offering something we never provided. Partnerships instead of protection. Trade agreements instead of tribute demands." Admiral Colven, who had planned Operation Starfall, sat in his chair looking older than his 1,000 years. "What do the humans want from us? Are they planning to invade Confederation space? That's what makes them so dangerous," Thisazara said. "They don't want to conquer us. They want to make us irrelevant. The chamber fell silent as the council members absorbed this information. For thousands of years, the Confederation had maintained control through military strength and technological superiority. If humanity could offer other species the same advanced technology without the political restrictions, the entire galactic order would collapse. We need military advice, Zenthra said finally. Recall Commander Vex High immediately. 1 week later, Vex High stood in the council chamber once again, but this time, no one was laughing at his words. The same beings who had mocked his warnings now listened to every word with desperate attention. You want my advice? Vex High said, looking at each council member in turn. Stop thinking like conquerors, and start thinking like neighbors. What does that mean? Asked Counselor Thresh. Vex High activated his personal display and showed images of human space over the past 3 months. Instead of military installations, the pictures showed trade stations, research facilities, and communication networks connecting dozens of different species. The humans are not building an empire, he explained. They are building a community. Every species they meet becomes a partner, not a subject. Every new technology they develop gets shared with their allies, not hoarded for military advantage. Admiral Colvin shook his head in confusion. That makes no strategic sense. How do they maintain control if they give away their advantages? They don't maintain control, Vex High replied. They build trust. And trust, it turns out, is more powerful than fear. He walked closer to the council chairs, his metal leg clicking against the crystal floor. Do you know what the humans call their new alliance? The Cooperative Federation, not the Human Empire or the Earth Dominion. They put cooperation first. But surely they must want something, Zenthra insisted. No species acts without self-interest. Vex High smiled grimly. They want what we all want. To grow. To learn. To explore the galaxy and find their place in it. The difference is that they believe they can do this better by helping others achieve the same goals. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Bruthen spoke up. What do you recommend we do? Send an ambassador to Earth, Vex High said without hesitation. Open formal negotiations with the human government. Offer them what they have always wanted, recognition as equals, and the freedom to choose their own path. And if they refuse? Asked Thresh. They won't refuse, Vex High said confidently. I have been monitoring their communications for 3 months. Despite everything we did to them, they still speak of the possibility of peaceful cooperation with the Confederation. They would rather have us as friends than enemies. Admiral Colvin looked skeptical. How can you be so certain? Because I understand them now in a way I didn't 50 years ago, Vex High replied. The humans are not motivated by revenge or conquest. They are motivated by curiosity and hope. They want to learn from us, not destroy us. Zenthra leaned forward in her chair. And who would you recommend as this ambassador? Vex's High stood at attention and looked directly at her. I volunteer for the assignment. The council exchanged surprised glances. You? Asked Bruthen. But you fought against them. You lost half your body in that war. Which is exactly why they will listen to me, Vex High explained. I am living proof that the Confederation can change. I went from being their enemy to understanding their potential. If I can make that journey, so can our entire civilization. The council debated for several hours before reaching their decision. When they finally voted, it was unanimous. Commander Vex High would travel to Earth as the Confederation's first official ambassador to humanity. 2 weeks later, Vex High stood on the bridge of a small diplomatic vessel as it approached Earth. He could see the blue planet growing larger on the view screen, surrounded by orbital stations that now incorporated both human and alien technology into their designs. Approaching vessel, this is Earth traffic control, came a voice over the communication system. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. This is Commander Vex High of the Galactic Confederation, he replied. I am here as an official ambassador, requesting permission to open formal diplomatic relations between our peoples. There was a brief pause, then, Welcome to Earth, Commander. President Chen is waiting to meet with you. As his ship was guided to one of the orbital stations, Vex High reflected on the journey that had brought him here. 3 months ago, he had been a forgotten veteran whose warnings were dismissed as the fears of an old soldier. Now he carried the authority to negotiate the first true treaty between humanity and the galactic community. Through the view screen, he could see human and alien ships working together, building something new in the space between worlds. It wasn't the empire the Council had tried to create, nor was it the submission they had demanded from humanity. It was something better. A partnership based on respect rather than fear. Cooperation rather than domination. When his ship docked at the station, Vex High was greeted by President Chen herself, along with representatives from a dozen different alien species that had already joined humanity's growing alliance. "Welcome to the future, Commander," Chen said with a warm smile. As they walked together toward the conference room, Vex High realized that the council members who had mocked his warnings about human unpredictability had been right about one thing: humanity was dangerous. They were dangerous because they offered something the galaxy had never seen before. The possibility that ancient enemies could become trusted friends. That different species could work together as equals, and that the future didn't have to repeat the mistakes of the past. It was the most wonderful kind of danger imaginable.